Hello friends, with the Matrix Special, I'm Imtiaz Gul, and today we would like to introduce to you a very known personality from the UK, Professor Anatol Lieven, who had been teaching at various universities in the Middle East, in the UK, and now is about to take up an assignment somewhere in the United States. He also served in Pakistan and Afghanistan as a correspondent for British newspapers. Thank you, Anatol, with Matrix Special. And we would first like to ask a basic question, since everybody is talking about Afghanistan and you have also been serving there, covering that country for quite some time. Did you really expect that the Kabul regime will crumble like a pack of cards, and the way things accelerated after August the 15th when the Taliban marched into Kabul?
I actually predicted an early and rapid collapse in the spring. And I think that even Western governments, on balance, expected the Afghan government to fall. Some of them were hoping against hope that it wouldn't. But I think it's true that nobody, including myself, expected it to fall quite so quickly. Because, of course, I, for example, remembered, when I was a journalist based in Peshawar in the late 1980s, covering the Afghan Mujahideen, and we all expected the communist state in Afghanistan to fall very quickly after the Soviets left, and actually it survived for 3 years. So that made us all a bit cautious, and that, of course, also it is an illustration of the complete rottenness of the Afghan state that America created. The fact that the one backed by the Soviets survived so very well in many ways, and only collapsed, when Soviet aid collapsed, and the one created by the Americans went down like a pack of cards. So the collapse was not unexpected. The speed of it was.
So the next question I wanted to ask was about a recent webinar which you also attended, and a former CIA official who had served in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, Milton Bearden, basically made a revelation in which he said that the Sudanese government had sent Osama bin Laden to Afghanistan on his or on the CIA's request, and that Taliban's former foreign minister Mullah Abdul Wakil Mutawakkil had called him. He called Milton Bearden to say that the Taliban had removed the protection of Osama bin Laden, basically suggesting that the Americans can come and take Osama bin Laden. Are you familiar with this, and did you really believe it was true what Bearden was saying?
I think that's entirely true, because I was in Washington then, and I and some people like me were trying to talk to people about negotiating with the Afghan Taliban to surrender bin Laden, to a third party, send him and his people, out, so America, for example, America could have put pressure on Saudi Arabia to take him, and there was total lack of interest. The Bush administration had made up its mind for war. Not, though, I don't think this was part at that stage of some geopolitical calculation involving Afghanistan. I think it was sheer desire for revenge for 9/11, to take revenge on the Taliban as well as Al-Qaeda for what had happened.
Now that so much has happened, the Americans have exited in a very unceremonious way. Can we say that the invasion of Afghanistan by the Americans had some geopolitical objectives?
No, because there was before. The thing is, the invasion of Iraq, yes, but we know that because, of course, for years the neoconservatives and people who then moved into the Bush administration had been calling for America to invade Iraq, and as we know, immediately after 9/11, Paul Wolfowitz proposed that America should ignore Afghanistan and invade Iraq. So we know that that was their plan, totally irrespective of all this, made up stuff about Saddam Hussein's links to terrorism. But before 9/11, the Bush administration was totally uninterested in Afghanistan. There were no plans to invade or attack Afghanistan. Afghanistan, you have memoirs by former counter-terrorism officials like Richard Clarke, saying that they were begging the Bush administration to pay more attention to Al-Qaeda and to Afghanistan. The Bush administration just wasn't interested. So there is no evidence that there was a geopolitical agenda there.
The next question I would like to ask is about whether the US mission in Afghanistan, which initially looked like a revenge for the Twin Tower attacks, how did it degenerate into a nation-building project, and what role did the European countries play in this?
You see, two things happened. One of them, which was very much connected to the agenda of the invasion of Iraq and the Middle East, which was that Bush announced the global war on terror and linked that to what the Bush administration called their freedom agenda for the Middle East. In other words, they were going to justify, or partially justify, the invasion of Iraq, and then after that, perhaps the invasion of Iran, in the name of building democracy and freedom in the Middle East. It was very difficult if you're going to, on the one hand, say that, on the other hand, to basically pull out of Afghanistan and hand it over to some form of warlord military rule. If you were going to try and build democracy in the Middle East, you had to try and build democracy in Afghanistan. So that was the first thing. But the second thing was, this was really the fault of the Europeans, the EU and NATO, because and which really shows us in a pretty pathetic light, frankly. NATO and the EU came crawling back saying, we want to build democracy in Afghanistan. Let us build democracy in Afghanistan. Out of this, you got this sort of absolutely grotesque things like Italy being made responsible for building law and justice and the police in Afghanistan. You had European officials who knew absolutely nothing much about anything, to be honest, let alone Afghanistan. But so you see, the rest of the West, if you like, committed itself to this democratic nation building. This was not a geopolitical game for Afghanistan. It's because the Europeans are pathetically desperate to keep America committed to the defense of Europe, because they can't do it themselves. They don't have the money, they don't have the will, they don't have the fighting spirit. European officials themselves told me in private, we're not going to Afghanistan because of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is irrelevant to us. We need to show the Americans we're helping them so that they will, go on defending us in Europe.
And now the last question, Anatol. Everybody is interested in asking as to why the contribution of Pakistan in the Afghan peace process, in the humanitarian assistance, is not acknowledged. And most of the Western countries, as well as those in the region, particularly India, and a lot of Afghans, still continue to vilify Pakistan for the failures of the entire Western alliance. What would you say to that?
Obviously, this has been a dreadful humiliation for the United States and for the West in general. And so obviously they're thrashing around looking for scapegoats. So, much of the American establishment is trying to blame it on Biden. America is trying to blame it on Pakistan. Everybody's looking around for somebody else to blame. Rather than dwell on the failure of our military, there's also a good deal, although it has been reported, of avoidance of the issue. Exactly why are our Western diplomats and all these aid officials and NGO people running for the airport, abandoning their Afghan staff and their responsibilities? The Taliban have guaranteed to protect them. I have to say as well, though, that not, of course, the people who are leaving now to escape from the Taliban. I have got a little in recent weeks of Afghan emigres who have been living in the West for years now, in London and in New York and so forth, lecturing the West on how we have betrayed Afghanistan and run away. Why exactly were you not in Afghanistan helping to build Afghan democracy, rather than sitting safely and comfortably in London or America or Europe and, lecturing the West? In the end, this has been an Afghan failure. Well, to get what we want, we will have to work through Pakistan. And through Russia and through Iran, which, by the way, somebody should tell Western diplomats at that point that it might be a good idea to be polite to Pakistan rather than, constantly blaming Pakistan for our disasters.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Anatol, for sparing time. And viewers, the only message that Anatol wanted to convey or conveyed through this interview as far as Pakistan is concerned: treat Pakistan with kindness. Accept what Pakistan has done and also admit your own failures. This is a message directed at the United States as well as its Western allies. Thank you very much.